Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Apparently, Limit can't do the opening segment today. Thank you for
Mhm.
coming here, listening to us. Today, we're going to speak about Magecraft, and with me, we have here the creator of this podcast, Limitseeker. Hello, Limitseeker.
Hello, I'm Limitseeker, the moderator of the server. Although I'm not the creator of Big Stack, it was made by a couple people, but there has been a situation that disable us from getting together again. So for now, we will rotate more hosts. So hopefully, we have more like variety of hosts hosting this particular podcast.
Yes, and second here we have the one and only, the phantasmal species, the corpse princess, the one who hews fallacies.
Hey, hi everyone. Yeah, I'm kind of a translator, and I'll probably just be chipping in if Tiz and Limit miss some points or something. So
Yes, she is here to whip us into shape should we fuck up, because I
Yeah.
know we will. Anyway, I'm just a random Nasu lurker. I've been following this company for a very long time. I think too long, and I wish it wasn't that long, but it is what it is. And I hope
Has
everyone will
been
have fun. Anyway,
yeah.
what are we going to talk about today, Lina?
As the title suggests, we're going to talk a lot about Magecraft today, magic, etc. I think that related into the recreation of mystery itself. So, fallacies, in simple term, how would you describe this Magecraft slash magic thing?
uh, we could describe Magecraft as the reenactment of mysteries, but I
Mm.
suppose we'd have to first define what mysteries are.
Mm.
Mysteries are in general like a supernatural phenomenon that hypothetically appears in uh, you know myths and legends and so on and so forth. Um, like technically speaking, it's any phenomenon that's outside of what we accept as being commonplace in
Mm.
this day and age. Um,
Mm.
Mystery is essentially an artificial effort to go about and recreate these phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it is one of the most interesting aspects of Type Moon. I think it's one of the main aspects why people enjoy the series as they are. Outside of it being generally an urban fantasy series, the magic is while it's pretty vast and it covers a lot of topics, it is still presented in a form that is very palatable to viewers and readers.
I would say, like, the idea of Magecraft itself, right? Even though it's supposed to be like Majutsu, right? Like something like Mage create, right? It's more closer in retrospect into a concept that all we know is like thaumaturgy, it's like recreation of mystery miracles, things like that, right? And henceforth, when we're talking about Magecraft, we're talking about this recreation of such things that has been touched in previous podcasts and in has explained before. Mystery is something that's outside of the common sense of humans, outside of physics, outside of like anything that's considered a norm. And the attempt to recreate it in one way is called Magecraft.
And now that we have talked a little bit about Magecraft itself, what do you think about the people who practice Magecraft or magic? The mystical
Like
Magi, the great researchers of the clock tower.
they are nerds, says.
Very
Yeah,
true,
they
very
are
true.
nerds.
If you put it
So
down to that, they are
so
nerds and
speaking
champions.
Mm? Yes, what?
speaking in general, they're like essentially like the most toxic of academic research, except that they're even more so, basically.
Very
If
toxic.
you
Yes.
if you're a university student or a professor or like somebody in like higher education, imagine your worst professors and like your worst like most competitive classmates, like at the very tip top of like the academic stack and stuff, and like and then imagine that these people actually commit murder, and you have a rough idea of what Magi are generally like.
That's forgive me the pun. It's a big fallacy, isn't it? they teach you theory of Magecraft, but their own research that they work on, they never reveal it to anyone because that only belongs to them and their family. So what they basically do is they just give you like the snippets and the basic idea of what you're supposed to do, and then just throw you into the vast ocean that is the world of mystery.
Yeah. I mean, that's how mages operate, right? Most of them are either like full hermit, and those are more public. They still hold their dearest secret onto themselves, right? They pass down such secrets under the crest. Those are the methods of mages to preserve the mystery, right? And then they have this countless years of research, and it must be well known enough that the foundation of such research is stable, but it must be too known that the mystery is lost.
So, like the general objective of practicing Magecraft to begin with isn't to the purpose of casting Magecraft. It's to the purpose of attaining the root, and like this is the first and foremost objective above all else. So, like generally speaking, when you encounter a magus, like they're probably like there's actually a stigma against applying Magecraft for practical purposes to such an extent that like a lot of Magi actually shun the use of technology.
Very true, because doing so
and
will reveal your secret.
They furthermore shun like the use of Magecraft as a replacement for the technology. So it's like you end up with a bunch of people who are living practically in the Middle Ages.
Middle Age.
It's well, it's very interesting. They are very secretive, that's for sure. One would think that they would research or attain magic and Magecraft for the sake of making their lives easier, but no, it's just really to reach root, and practicing it in the open would risk exposing it to the people who are not in the know-how of mystery, and then it would also run risk of exposing your secret crafts to others, and they can just use it for their own gains. So really, mages and magi are like ultimate shut-ins.
Speaking in general, like the reason why there's the general idea that like popularizing Magecraft would result in like Magecraft becoming weaker is that the more something enters into like what generally like is accepted as the common sense, the less potent it is as a mystery, and the less able it is to like deny other mysteries and to deny the common sense, basically. So actually bringing thaumaturgical practice into the public would simply render it as something that would be the subject of the common sense, something that everyone knows, something that's explainable via science.
That's the irony, right? Because on one hand, they need Magecraft to be secretive, so people wouldn't understand the inner workings of it. But on the other hand, they need people to be aware of that something of like this, not per se exists, but there is an idea of it. Like you have fantasy stories that or legends of people from the past. You know, people say, "Oh no."
It's in essence.
Go on.
It's like in essence the same thing as a stage magician, basically. Like you gain popularity as a stage magician by showing enough of it that people are mystified, but you don't actually tell them what your tricks are. Because if they knew your tricks, it wouldn't really be that special anymore, would it? So that's essentially how, right? It's like that, except that like this divide between like actually being popularly known and popularly comprehended, like would actually compromise the like effect of the Magecraft to such a point that it no longer has the ability to deny other mysteries.
You know, that's one of the disappointing things about Magecraft and Nasuverse, I think, because it could be used for greater good, that's for sure. It could help a lot of people, but due to the nature of it, the more you expose it, the less useful and potent it becomes. So it's like this cycle of, well, it's very useful, but I can't show it to you. Too bad.
And because the way you need to lay out like foundation in terms of Magecraft, like you cannot just like use Magecraft in like random place. if the place doesn't really support say Magecraft, right? There isn't enough belief, there isn't enough things that are being set up in that specific areas. In the end, those Magecraft has a limitation too, right? Imagine if you practice like shamanism in Indonesia, for example, and then you go to Japan, where shamanism practice is different. I would argue like you have more difficulty like trying to replicate things back home versus things where you are in a specific region, right? Meaning,
this is because the shamanism that you're talking about is engraved by the faith of the people or by the belief of the people into the local common sense. So like more or less, like the belief of the people like makes possible the use of these mysteries essentially.
Yeah.
But I suppose like it'd be best to define like how it is exactly that like mystery functions. Like more or less, you have a situation where like say you have a particular effect that like how should I put it, denies like what's a good way of explaining it? Say you have a fan, an electric fan that controls wind. Okay, if you had a wind spell that could also control wind, and you use it on thing produced by the electric fan, the wind spell would supersede that. Essentially, what you have is, because it's grounded in mystery, the standing is higher than the wind produced by the fan, and thus like it's able to gain control over like whatever wind is being produced by the fan to like redirect it and stuff. So the way that mystery works in general is that the higher the standing of mystery, the more it can deny. And so say you have like randomly a wind spell at like level, like I don't know, like a standing of mystery of 1. Like a similar mystery that has like a standing of 2 or 3 or something would versus the standing of 1 deny that effect. So it's sort of like a situation where like it absolutely like the low level wind spell would absolutely not be able to deny the mystery of a higher level wind spell, and both would be able to deny like phenomena that generally exist within the world, like as grounded in science, basically.
So basically, like mystery able to recreate stuff that we can do. But if you have a higher level of mystery, you can like deny the lower level mystery application of say Magecraft.
Very good.
All right.
So we talked about practitioners of Magecraft and the basics of Magecraft. What does a person need to enact magic? Because of course it can't be just by snapping their finger. Anyone just snaps a finger on the tree and just happens, right? What is it that Magi require that allows them to practice wonders?
I mean,
well, like the simple answer is that there is absolutely no way that a human would be able to perform like a normal human would be able to perform Magecraft unassisted. And that's the key point. Like, there's always something external to the human that permits Magecraft to happen.
Yeah.
If you were to have a magus in a complete vacuum, they wouldn't be able to perform any Magecraft. This is because like Magecraft is performed using systems external to them, and those systems are referred to as foundations.
Right.
This would be akin to like tapping into like a server somewhere distant. Like say you're going to a website and like the website is actually stored on some server farm in California or something. Well, like the act of seeing the website or the act of like doing stuff on the website is just something that you're doing at the terminal. That's basically what Magecraft is.
Right, and because
Magecraft is the local.
In Europe, it will take you much longer to connect to the server somewhere in America, and that's the basic idea.
Yeah.
I think Limit already tapped onto it, that a magus is limited, or rather can be limited by the land or the area or by the people that carry the mystery of your craft. Which I think
so you have a situation.
Yes, go on.
Well, you have a situation where basically the people of a particular area, like they define what's commonplace and normal, and they also define what's not commonplace and not normal. And those things that lie in the uncommon and unnormal like part of like their idea of how the world is built is essentially where mystery lies, basically.
Yeah.
And like the beliefs of the people also define, for example, that like in the example that Limit gave earlier, like belief in shamanistic practices, like essentially like establish that there exists a path to access those powers that are outside of the normal. And this is basically how like the how we have like a situation where Magecraft can be accessed. More or less, like the belief in this particular thing is like what establishes what's referred to as a foundation, a thaumaturgical foundation. But thaumaturgical foundations are like what I described earlier, the server things that you access from remotely, basically. But in some cases, you would actually have to have like somebody set up a ritual to like bind that into place or something along those lines. And like to remotely access this quote unquote server, you would also have to have like what's referred to as thaumaturgical circuits, which are like hereditary like I would say structures inside of one's soul that allow a kind of like synchronization with this distant server, the thaumaturgical foundation.
Yeah. So, I mean, so we basically have the foundation laid out, like the networks, the architecture in order to use Magecraft, because normally you cannot just use Magecraft, right? But as Randall pointed out, it's like Uber Eats. Like you have lots of networks of people working together to create one singular system. And in Magecraft, you have like a person trying to use something that's normally impossible, and you now have the framework. So what about the person itself, right? The person also has a system, correct? The person has circuit in order to get energy, to convert energy into a usable form, from unusable form to usable form, right? So you have that. And you have factors that allows them to use it. They have their own alignment to specific elements that allow them to be more efficient in using specific kind of Magecraft. You also have Crest, which is a culmination of studies and formulas that pass down from family to family. You also have Origin that affect how you use Magecraft, which, you know, it depends on each person, right?
So let's like talk about the Crest a little, because the Crest would actually be like the, I guess, one of the more important parts. You have your circuits. You have your circuits, and the circuits are what allow the Magus to communicate with the thaumaturgical foundation. The circuits are also responsible for like the conversion of like I would say otic energy, the vital energy of organisms, essentially, into a usable form, mana, that essentially like gets communicated in such a way as to like produce an effect. So like what you have with the Crests, on the other hand, is a sort of, I guess, record of everything that the family's developed, an optimization of the family spells, like compiled over time into like some sort of spiritual organ that gets transplanted from like generally from parent to child. The original Crests were like parts of phantasmal species, or maybe the spiritual elements of some phantasmal species, like ancient mystical life forms and so forth, that gets transplanted into a human, and then like the spells that the family develops gets somehow attached to this thing, and this thing grows over time and is passed from parent to child. The possession of a Crest is in general something that allows for highly optimized use of a particular spell. That's way in excess of what somebody just starting out in Magecraft would be able to access.
I think while magic crests are, I think, one of the most powerful tools a mage family can have, it is also the highest mark of disappointment of a singular mage, right? Because a goal of a mage is to reach root, and because they couldn't in their lifetime with their research, they had to pass it down to the next generation. So with that, it carries a lot of regret and anger that also gets pushed onto the successor. And by doing so, the successor is basically cursed into following the same path. either reach root or pass
Well,
it down to.
that may be figurative. We don't know exactly. We do know that Nasu refers to these things as like the curse of a family, like
Yeah.
a curse bestowed from parent to child, basically.
It is a great honor to receive the crest, but also it is a great responsibility too. Sometimes
Yeah,
even too big, I would say.
Yeah.
So in general, you
Also-
have the crests and you have the circuits, right? So the circuits themselves are not like things that are necessarily natural to humans, but like owing to like successive like selective breeding, I guess, over many generations, certain families have like managed to like create structures within them that can be used essentially as antenna to communicate with the foundations. Now, the thing you might be thinking is, okay, so you said that it was a spiritual structure. Why is it a spiritual structure if it's based on genetics? Well, the answer is because like in Nasu, genetics are reflected in the soul, or rather, how should I put it? Like things that occur within the body as the body develops are reflected within the soul, and vice versa. So the soul is reflected upon the body, and the body is reflected upon the soul. This is the reason why, if you've seen like the ending of Heaven's Heel, they're able to restore Emishiro into like a body that resembles himself. They really placed what they actually did was place a soul inside of something resembling a marionette, and the marionette came to resemble him basically. So right, so essentially you have the soul, the soul imposing itself upon the flesh. But the thing is that the characteristics of the flesh, such as like things like the genetic structures within cells, they also have an impact on the structure of the soul. And this is how circuits come to be formed. This is how you have a situation where genetics can have an impact upon things that are clearly structures within the soul. So what Magi are in general are the output of like extremely long-term eugenics projects that were created like many centuries ago.
I think that ties into the like most well-known example, and that is Makiri Zoken. One of the examples of him was that he was cast away from the land where his mystery was established due to reasons, and because of that his lineage is declining and can't produce circuits anymore in the heirs, and then also in the fact that he has to go on.
I'll have to like offer a correction to that, but because like actually when you read the epilogue of like Zoken in Heaven's Feel, what it says is that like it wasn't really that like he lost the relationship to the land or anything like that. It was because the karma of, or rather the karma of like the Makiri family had come to a conclusion.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, like the point is like the soul and the body are intertwined in fate, right? In fate series,
right?
And you can see it in Zoken. A good example is Zoken body's rot, but his soul and body kind of rot, even though he is technically immortal. Because in the end, you cannot hide what happened in your body or what happened in your soul. What happened in your body reflected to your soul. What happened to your soul for your body. His soul is getting degraded the more he's trying to artificially extend his life. That's why his body need to be kept changing, because his body cannot contain such soul.
I just want to finish my point.
The thing is that...
Oh.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, it was just that
yeah.
Shiro used a similar technique. They used a similar technique to restructure Shiro's body in the sense that Zoken has to consume other people to keep himself going and to keep his body from rotting away. And it's basically the same. He possesses a body and then it takes shape of Makiri Zoken.
Yeah.
Which was the reason why he couldn't actually assume any other shape besides himself.
Right.
Like he because the body came to resemble the soul. So essentially, it's always going to be a rotting body since his soul is also rotting. So like this was the reason why you had like constant degeneration.
Which is really strange, because he must have been along for a very long time. So you'd have to think how his descendants must have felt having someone like that in their house. It's like, okay, so we have this guy. He's just sitting there. Sometimes eats people. He's been looking the same for like past 400 years, and we don't know what to do with him.
And yeah, it's real nasty. Also, back to like the circuit and crest point, right? So, like if you want to go with kitchenology, right? You have foundation, which is the place, the kitchen, right? You have the chef, eugenics, breakdown chef, and that has like tools that getting past that, which is like crest, circuit, etc. And then you have the ingredient, which is like the magical energy that you want to convert. And then finally you have the food itself, which is result of the chef working with using the tools, using available ingredients, using in the kitchen that where the place is possible to create such food.
And I'll just lead on to, like you touched on before. Go on.
I was gonna say that, like, as pointed out in the chat, like, the body of Zokin, like, actually coming to its current state seems to be a fairly recent development. Like, as at least roughly 2 centuries ago, he still looked like a normal person,
like
I guess.
Like a normal
person.
The handsome Zokin.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, but I was going to lead into, so we have the soul affecting the way a mage expresses their magecraft, but what are the other elements that affect the way the magecraft is practiced? Because you already touched on it before, Limited. It was the alignments and origins. What are those?
So let's start with the origin, maybe. Like, the origin is how should I put it? The origin is the fundamental basis about which a soul comes to form. In Nasu, all souls ultimately begin in the root, and at the very, very forefront, the only thing that exists is a directionality. Now, a directionality is some sort of purpose or objective. Basically, like once it comes to a cohesion as a directionality, it can no longer really exist in the root itself, because the root is basically nothing. The root is a chaos where nothing is distinct. So like you have a directionality. If it's a distinct directionality that you can like describe or something, it's no longer going to be in the root. And then as it exits the root, it gradually draws unto itself more things of like I would say the same polarity, and this eventually comes to form like what we call a soul. So like the origin is I guess like the name of this original directionality, or rather the sum of everything that's inside of this person's soul as of present day. Now, like what a directionality is in like the context of like I guess an origin would be. See Emiya Kiritsugu. Emiya Kiritsugu has an origin of cutting and binding. Because of this, if Emiya Kiritsugu attempts to fix any kind of electronic device, you end up with a situation where like his efforts will cause the device to be broken even worse than it was when he started to fix it. So in essence, like what you have is like it's sort of like an inevitability. No matter what he does, as long as he tries to fix a machine, it will end up being broken worse. If he ends up trying to doing certain things, like it'll end up changing it in some kind of irrevocable way. Basically, if he tries to fix something, it'll end up breaking it in an irrevocable way. And this sort of interaction really displays itself in every single one of his relationships.
Yeah, that's trash. He
tried to save Shiro
and destroyed everything.
Oh yeah! Oh
right.
My god!
He tried to fix Shiro, and Shiro ended up being broken worse than he used to be. He tried to fix his family. He tried to save his wife and so on and so forth. But all of these things ended up being absolutely horrible. So yeah, what you could describe it like a directionality to be is like some sort of inevitability that characterizes everything that a person does.
That feeling when you try to steer your adoptive son from Magecraft and he ends up being a practitioner. Amazing.
So the origin has some kind of influence on what a magus can do, and certain magi have the ability to express this within their Magecraft. So in Kiritsugu's case, his cutting and binding express itself as a how should I put it, a healing spell that heals wrong.
Yes.
Like anytime he tries to like if he applies it to like a perfectly healthy person, they'll end up like being extremely fucked up. So that being the origin, like what is in an alignment? Well, like ultimately we would say that an alignment is it's sort of like one of those things in like RPGs where a particular character can only use water or something.
Right.
That's generally how it works out in Nasu. But like the explanation in Nasu is that like if you have a tie with a particular element, you can use it. That's essentially how it works out. So, like if we want to describe like what a directionality is in terms of an origin, like if you're going to be like I don't know like how should I put it? An origin defines like the sorts of interactions that you're going to have in your life. An alignment describes like I guess the sorts of elements that you have a tie to that you would have like some sort of relationship with enough to like wield it in some manner. So say that you have a tie with water, then that means that you'll be able to use like spells related to the element of water.
Okay. So someone is asking, oh yeah, there's two questions, right? Mana is saying everyone has origin, right? We just don't know. And for Antidote is asking, is there an example of a Magi weaponizing their origin like Kiritsugu does? And I answered, well, perhaps there is the one that's like indirectly affected. For example, Shiro Realty Marble and Shiki Ryogi has Void origin, relates on her connection with Root, right? Giving her access to her mystical eyes, mystical eyes, the perception. But is there anyone that uses it like more in Kiritsugu, like literally weaponizing it in that sense?
I don't actually remember off the top of my head, so I don't know.
Yeah, I guess that's for now. Or,
yeah. So like regarding the thing about origins, yes, in fact, everyone does have an origin, but like we don't necessarily know what they are, and like actually, how many people know about origins in Nasu is like not really clear. So.
Oh, as an in-character knowledge of origin itself, it's unknown.
Yes.
So it's ironic, isn't it? You can't not have an origin, but you can have an origin of nothingness. Truly, the biggest fallacy of them all.
But yeah, so like, what we're describing when we're describing origins is really something that's referred to as a tie of N. So like, if you have like a tie of N with a person, like you're probably going to interact with them in some way or another. And when we describe a well, I guess any human soul has any number of ties of N with like people that they're going to encounter in their lives.
So
and so like what that means is that they're like, say in a given timeline, like a person's probability of interacting with like so and so individual might be higher than random. Like, so say that like the random probability is one, like I don't know, 1 out of 100 or something. Like so like there's 100 people within this timeline, and normally your probability of interacting with any of these people should be 1 out of 100. But like what happens when you have a tie event with a particular person, that's that like the probability of interacting with them might be 5 out of 100 or 10 out of 100 or 50 out of 100. And like this defines like basically what you would like, how you would encounter them, like, or whether you encounter them at all. This is the sort of thing that like we're talking about when we're talking about alignments. Essentially, elemental alignments are actually ties of N. You can't use the element of fire if you have no relationship with fire, and if you're not actually like, I guess if you don't actually bear a directionality or a tie of N that like makes you related to fire.
Oh, we had a question.
So there are a lot of questions.
Yeah. I'll start with a man with no name. He asked if Solomon went to the root and reincarnated after Solomon's singularity.
The answer is we don't know.
Right.
We don't know how that specific Solomon / Cody
We don't know
is
the circumstances of his noble fantasy and how it affected his existence.
yeah. Blue is asking directionality, and I help answer it, which is like spiral of redirection is directionality. How is it referring? Explained by Toko and Karno. But if you want to explain more, please go ahead.
So, like, a directionality is simply that, like, anything has a purpose, and like will generally act to fulfill that purpose, and like it won't go away until that purpose is fulfilled. So essentially, you have a situation where like the thing that makes up a soul will continue on forever until like such a point at which their directionality is satiated, basically, meaning that like when they come into existence as a living human being at some point, like their lives will be to the purpose of fulfilling that directionality. That's what an origin is.
And we have a question from Mana, and it ties into this. Do origins carry on from reincarnation? Since all souls
is it destiny?
To the
root. The answer is that like the origins are the only thing that carry across between reincarnations.
Okay, so is it a destiny? Can you call it a destiny, or is it something that affects destiny?
I think directionality is a better word for it because it doesn't tie you into a specific set of events.
It's not a destiny because like the only thing that happens is that it influences probabilities.
Right. It's nudges you towards some other like specific numbers, but it doesn't tie you into specific numbers.
So you can say in scientific terms, it's like predisposition, right? You have predisposition to do X.
You're more likely to go do X and Y, rather than you have to do X and Y.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I think that's all for now.
But yeah, that's like generally speaking, like the way that it works in Nasu is that it's not that like okay, so say you have an alignment of fire, right? That means that you can use fire spells. Right. That doesn't mean that you can use like spells related to elemental water. In fact, it means that you cannot use spells related to element. Yeah. So like it doesn't interact. It's not like those magic systems where it's like oh like not having an affinity for water simply means that like using water is more difficult. Yeah. It's rather that like you simply have no relationship with water, so you cannot use water. Which is the reason why Shiro having like an elemental affinity of sword means that he generally can't use most Magecraft. Period.
Except swords.
And then you have Rin, who's like a miracle born that she can use all elements, all 5 basic elements.
Average 1, right?
Yes.
She is referred to average.
She's referred to 1 in a million or in 100 million. Sure. There is something in this Tosaka gene. It must be from all the stealing they do.
must be something they stole from Edelfeld.
Yes. But I think that leads into the next topic, which is practicing magic. So we've already touched upon that all mages must tap into this server to enact their spells. So and they have to use mana for it. How is it generated? Where does a magus generate their energy to do so?
The Marioku, yeah.
So generally speaking, we like all living organisms have something called odd, or odo, or odic energy, or something like that. It's basically just vital energy, and like this however isn't directly usable to a magus like in its default state. So like it essentially gets like processed by the circuit somehow into a state where it's immediately available for use in Magecraft. And this like what happens then is that like by communication with the foundation, like the energy this mana that gathers within the circuits is able to like express an effect. If you read the explanation we get in like Mahoyo, actually what happens is that like the world has certain laws, right? So like not everything is permitted within the world. Certain things can't happen. Those, as we said earlier, those are the things that we refer to as mystery, right? But like what mana is specifically something that like can come to express mystery. So what you're doing when you cast the spell is essentially, oh, I've communicated with the foundation, and this foundation is now expressing itself through my circuits, and like expressing itself in the mana that I put out in such a way that like this impossible thing can briefly come into existence, so long as I provide mana for it. So that's the general way in which Magecraft like is actually cast.
So basically, like the world demands, like sometimes they demand tax in case of something that's like exert effect to the world, right? And then sometimes you just need it to like because there is law of conservation energy in general. You kind of need energy to run in general anything that you want to like transform or something like that. So in reality,
it's essentially a circumvention. It's a circumvention physical laws is all it is.
Yeah, you basically need to feed it using like magical energy, right? So when do people use odd and when do people use mana? Is there any distinction on that, or can mages can draw between them and just balance them out?
Like as soon as like odd enters into the circuits, it's mana. So basically, like saying that you're directly using odd is not really like a thing. There are uses for odd that's outside of like the practice of like Western Magecraft, but like basically that's not really a thing in the context of Western Magecraft, which is what most of Fate, like Magecraft and Fate, is like. So,
which is interesting, isn't it? Because like once you cast a spell and push out the mana out from your body, it returns back to the nature. So there is a cyclical. There's a cyclical nature to it. It doesn't just evaporate into nothing. It feeds into the nature itself, and there are practitioners who tap the mana, but can they just tap it infinitely, or is there like a limit to their bodies?
The thing that they draw
generally
from
speaking,
outside.
Generally speaking, like there's like some kind of mana capacity, but it doesn't even necessarily reflect the amount of odd that the same person can have.
Right.
So, like, say you have like a mana pool of like I don't know X. The entire pool of odd that the same magus actually possesses within their body is something like X plus Y.
Right.
And then like they'll never actually be able to use like X plus Y in its entirety, but like they'll be able to pull stuff from Y into X and then like use the X. So like the thing is that we're not told what the X plus Y is in any circumstance. So all it is that, well, this magus has a mana pool of X, and so like that defines the limit of like the mana that they can use at any given point.
Which is interesting because like a lot of Magi use tools to store mana in, so they can use it to enhance their spells, and that's one way to circumvent their limitations. For example, in the Tosaka family, where they store their mana in the gems through their nature of their family in Magecraft. And Magi in general use basically batteries in their tools, in their mystic codes. So I think that's one of the ways to get around it.
Like we also have the situation where, like, in some cases, like for example, Victor Frankenstein developed a way to use galvanism,
right,
which is a conversion of
electricity. Just like infinite cycling of
it's
mana,
a conversion
right?
of it converts electricity into mana and mana into electricity, basically. So in essence, like he's able to derive like mana from electricity somehow, and like exactly how that works, I don't know, but like I don't think it's actually ever clarified. That said, yes.
In practice, like galvanism is like used to basically like, oh, this character can just draw mana from environment like almost infinitely. It's just in practice. For example, Tesla did that like in the story, and then you have like Seek do that to basically like offset the recharge time of Balmo without having Dragon Reactor himself.
Yeah, but speaking in general, it's not really that many like characters that actually have access to this thing. So like, it's not So
it's definitely something a lot of Magi would seek, to have a way to generate mana. like for example in Rin, she spends years just charging a single gem. When she uses the gems, it doesn't look like much, but when you think about it, it's like $80,000 in just one stupid little rock, and then she spends like 10 years charging it, and every time she throws it, she just feels like that's a lot of money I just threw into the wind. And then you have a berserker just like shrugging it off, and you're like, okay.
So, where are we on our agenda right now?
I think this leads into the question of magical lineages. We've already touched upon it. That the main reason a mage wants to establish a lineage is to further their craft. How is it usually done?
Well, like generally speaking, it's like what we're talking about when we're talking about a lineage is really just like a family with the existence of a crest. Now, like with the situation with the crest, like generally what happens is that there's similarity between the souls of a parent and a child, and like thus when you develop a crest, the crest is usually specifically customized to like somebody with a soul that resembles yours. Thus, it cannot actually be transplanted into strangers that easily. Like, if you transplant it into somebody with no compatibility, the result is that, like, there's a risk of rejection, and it's essentially just an organ transplant, a spiritual organ. And like, as in the case of like a normal organ transplant with a like normal organ, like if you transplant it and there's no compatibility, then there's going to be issues. Like the rod of the body, well, the rod of the soul is the rod of the body after all. So like basically, it's not that good. So you have the crest being developed, and then you have it being transplanted from parent to child. It's often not even like necessarily transplanted in one go because that's too much of strain on the child's soul. So like what you generally have is like maybe before the age of 10 or 12, like the family starts like transplanting it like piece by piece into the successor.
Right.
And because they only have one crest, that means that they can only have one successor. And like if a given family wants to actually have like multiple crests, I suppose that's possible, but like it'd probably be a much vaster it'd be a much vaster investment since you'd have to maintain two crests simultaneously.
Which is also counterproductive
that there's areas
because you are splitting the knowledge that is supposed to be gathered in a singular spot, in a singular object.
Right.
Yeah. Also, you have issue with like, the protection issue, right? Which is like the one big reason why people are arguing like, why not both, split the crest for Sakura and Rin, because both of them are taunted mages even without the crest, right? The thing is like mages has difficulty in like keeping safe their like the child that they are passed down their crest, right? So if you kind of split it, that can be an issue. I think like Toko also got like
the issue with that wasn't really like about protecting the child with the crest, because the child with the crest is able to defend themselves in theory, like since they have access to high level magecraft. The problem is that the child who doesn't receive the crest would not possess that kind of protection, and not only they would lag behind. And like furthermore, there's also the issue of like, well, there's obviously going to be like some kind of conflict between the two siblings, because one of the siblings is always going to be second best, and the parent also has finite time. So unless the parent is able to devote like enough time to like both the children, you're not going to get a situation where the two children are treated equally. This is specifically the reason why like they like Tosaka Tokiomi decided to like barter off his kid to Zoken. So that's why Sakura ended up with the Matos.
Which leads me into a question, because Limit, you mentioned that it would be difficult to protect the child, right? But what can another Magus gain from stealing the crest? Because as we know from, for example, from Fate Zero, the crest, the Tosaka crest was extracted and then given to Rin. It wasn't like someone tried to steal it. So would anyone gain from...
it's not the crest itself. It's usually like, if for example, if Sakura is
No, I'm
kidnapped,
more
right?
like leading into like, is there even
No,
any
no.
benefit to stealing a crest?
Yeah, you cannot even use a crest normally. Like
Right.
if, for example, Toko cannot even like implant herself like her crest to herself. What happened is like she has like indirect connection to the crest she remade. That's how like she operates. She doesn't like just put the crest because the compatibility exists.
Well, yeah, there's the issue of compatibility, but like generally speaking, like certain like if you take possession of a crest, hypothetically you would be able to like make use of elements of it by like extracting bits, maybe incorporating incorporating into yourself. This is apparently how like the Edelfelt family generally operates. They go into war zones, find like Magus families that happen to live in those war zones, and then like extract the crests from said families, and then maybe incorporate it into themselves. And then like in the case of the Third War, probably this ended up happening to them.
Right.
So they lost one of the two crests they maintained.
Yeah. Again, like a good example is even if you want a crest, like Toko is like she has like a rig in like Mahoyo, I think. Like that's how like she operate the crest, like 20-ish crest like she operates it. And for regarding like the person itself, in the end, if you are like you have a talent as a mage just as a kid, like people want to like kidnap you and use you for experiment. You have a good body, why not become like a lab rat? So that's why like you are protected if you cannot like defend for yourself.
The child has generally has an affinity for Magecraft. So like this affinity could be useful for various research purposes. But yeah, regarding like the question in chat, the real question is whether or not the Edelfelt crest has been assimilated into the Tosaka one. I'd say that like we see enough similarity between the Magecraft used by like by Lulia to the Magecraft used by Rin that we could probably surmise that like the Edelfelt crest has in fact been incorporated into the Tosaka crest.
It's more than just them being cousins.
They have like same family attribute. Both are using conversion.
Right,
so,
both are using dual Magecraft, and both have Gander. So like this is a situation where there's a lot of overlap.
So I guess it's like when you're trying to transfer like a blood cell, it's like both of them are like A positive, and you know it's more likely that you can assimilate the crest if not already being assimilated. I guess that's the easiest example I can find.
Okay.
And finally, to close.
I understand the question by Durandal. He asked if Magic Crest is good, why aren't there any Magic Crest 2?
That's a joke. Like, why there's no sequel if it's like if it's not?
But yeah, let's head into the last topic for today. That is the ultimate manifestation of mystery. That is sorceries. What are sorceries?
Or true magic, Honto no Maho or Maho magic in general.
Like based on the translation, it's either true magic or just magic, as opposed to Magecraft. But yeah, so like speaking in general, like we have the line between like the things that are generally extant within or generally possible within the physics of like the world of humans, and then like when we start to talk about Magecraft, like mysteries and so forth, this is stuff that's like not quite within like the full explanation of science, things that really aren't totally accounted for but still considered possible, like quote unquote possible. But at a certain point, like the physics of the world of humans is, well, okay, let's take a step back. When I say the physics of the world of humans, like we have to talk about like the human order kind of. The human order is the summation of I guess how should I put it? In general, speaking in general, the world conforms to what human faith dictates it should. Not completely, and there are various caveats, but speaking in general, like it conforms to what humans believe. Right. So if humans believe that that the world should function a certain way, the world generally functions in a certain way. Now, this of course creates a situation where like the world defines that certain things are impossible. When you perform Magecraft, what you're actually doing is you're doing things that are outside of what like science has absolutely tacked down, but still within the realm of what's considered like possible via like technology or science, like within the bounds of physics, basically. What quote unquote true magic actually is stuff that falls outside of like the realm of the possible.
But you heard that people, if enough people believe the Earth is flat, it's flat. You heard it here.
Yeah, let's go to flat magic. Let's go.
So like generally speaking, like if you go read Kara no Kyokai, you'll see a thing where like it's said that like like Magecraft is what's possible as of the current era, using like sufficient time and resources. Like generally speaking, for example, okay, so like say that you want to like have like a I don't know, like induce rain over an area of land. With enough money and resources, you can go seed the clouds. You'd have to like pay for the airplanes. You'd have to pay for the chemicals, and then you'd have to have them launch and then like fly up and then like sprinkle those like the seed into the atmosphere, resulting like eventually in rain and so forth. Yes, this is a way to create rain using like scientific methods, right? But like what she said specifically was with sufficient time and resources, as of the current era. So what does that even mean? Well, like for example, if it takes 20 years to like attain a certain thing, like doesn't that mean that like it's eventually possible? Like won't you come to a situation where like spending sufficient time researching a particular thing will make X possible? Like say that it's like time travel or something like that, right? Like say that we spent 50 years researching time travel. Maybe by in 50 years time travel will be absolutely possible using like conventional physics. But no, that's not what's meant by like what's possible as of the current era, because what's possible as of the current era actually refers to the current house rules that the world of man is operating by. That is to say, the current era ends when like the house rules change. It's not a particular point in time. It's not like say 50 years or something like that. Like that's not what current era means. Current era specifically refers to like so long as the world of man is operating by the current set of house rules, it is the current era.
So when the logic of man changes, so will the era.
Right. So like basically just to go back to the original definition, Magecraft is anything that's possible given sufficient time and resources, so long as the world is operating by the current set of house rules. And magic is
Above
what falls out of that. Yes.
So that means that everything used to be true magic until it stopped being true magic due to the logic of man changing and being modified accordingly. So
Because everything used to be absolutely impossible and miraculous, and as civilization advanced, things became more possible and comprehended. So like eventually you'll get to a point where there's no such thing as true magic because science has consumed it all and rendered it all to possibility.
But is it possible for new true magic to emerge?
Hypothetically, yes. In practice, not really.
So how
Because,
many do you have left then? Because it must be very.
There's 5 true magics left. There's 5 true magics left, and like these are like things that were either obtained like en route to the root or as a consequence of reaching the root.
And do we know the current holders of said magics?
At present, there's only 2 known holders. It's one of them would be the holder of the second magic, Zelrech, and
That's the
the other
biggest troll of them all, according to fanfiction. Yes, indeed.
the holder of the 5th magic, Aoko. So, like, aside from this, we know of the existence of the 3rd magic, but like nobody holds it. and like we don't know anything about like the first or the fourth magic. So that's pretty much it.
The third magic, there is practitioner, but it's not really the magician themselves, right? You have the heavens feel practitioner, but not really actual
Right.
magician.
So,
Like as far as we know, like Ilya cannot be judged as like the actual like third magician or anything like that. So
Yeah.
Limit already touched upon it. So it's possible to a limited extent just manifest magic in a way, like a partial manifestation of magic. Is that possible?
yeah, so we do have like cases where people have access like partial manifestations of magic. For example, like Sasaki Kojiro has the ability to like use an incomplete form of like the second magic.
Right.
Yeah, dimensional refraction, right?
Right. The management of like the management of like adjacent realities. So like in Kojiro's case, what he does is he infinitely proliferates timelines in which he performs different actions, but then pulls the consequences of those actions somehow into the timeline that he's currently inhabiting.
But what then happens if a magician dies? Does the magic also die?
Well, maybe not. It depends on the case.
Right.
Yeah, it depends.
But is it possible to inherit the magic?
Yeah.
Hypothetically, it should be possible. Yes.
Yes. I mean, the way Aoko get like information, it's like trickling information from her grandfather, right? Although it's not directly.
Well, he created a pathway, and then like somehow she has access to that pathway. The specifics aren't totally clear.
Yeah.
Like it's not really a trickling of information, but it's sort of like we don't necessarily even know if it's like attached to her crest or anything, but like at least she has an access to that pathway.
Yeah. Isn't Avalon considered?
Go on.
Yeah, there are a lot of things, as Mac mentioned in the comment section. There are things are considered on par to true magic, and that's true. There are a lot of tools, authority that is on par on such true magic.
Let's simplify. The thing is that like whether something is possible or impossible is just something that's defined by humans, and things that are not humans don't function by those rules. So obviously they would have access to things that like humans don't consider possible.
Yeah. So basically,
it doesn't. Like basically, something is only impossible because humans have said it isn't. Like it's impossible.
Right.
So.
For example,
if you're not a human.
Can I just interject?
Yeah.
I had a question. A man with no name asked if Avalon is considered true magic or on par.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to answer that right now. So, yeah, the thing is, like, if, for example, if a god in their territory is authority to time travel, that is on par on true magic. That's true, without being true magic itself. Because as Fallacies once said, like these creatures have something that human doesn't have. So because the human logic dictates which are true magic and which are not true magic, this means like this stuff are considered true magic to us, but not. It's possible for these circumstances to happen.
Right, and then a reaction.
So essentially,
go on.
In human existences would look at our true magic and say, okay, I don't really see the big deal. Why are you making a big fuss about this fucking true magic? It's like there's no distinction between your magic and magecraft. Right. That's just something that humans made up.
But then also we have another question. So human influence defines law of magic, but I think it's more applied to the fact that whatever is the dominant species on Earth defines the logic of the world. So
that's correct.
So if, let's say Martians were the prime dominant species, they would define the world based on their understanding of the world.
Right. So like whatever the environment of the world conforms to, like whatever species is the dominant species, the primates.
Yeah.
Like the primates in the context of Nasu doesn't refer to apes. Primates in the context of Nasu refers to the prime, like whatever is the prime. So like the dominant species always impacts the environment, and because the humans are the dominant species of the Earth, the world conforms to what the humans think, basically.
So if in Lost Book 6 the fairy is the dominant species, then the law is the fairies, right?
Yeah. So you would have the common sense of the fairies defining what the world, like how the world behaves essentially.
Well, I think that's enough for tonight.
Yeah.
It
Yes, has been
very nice talking with you, and thank you everyone for joining. I think we'll still be answering questions in AlviCast, or should anyone have any questions, well. And
Yeah.
in the coming days, we'll also upload this onto YouTube. So should anyone who didn't get to catch the podcast, will be able to watch on YouTube.
But yeah, so these explanations, mostly just off the top of our heads. Right. So there's probably going to be errors, but hey, who cares? It's at least better than
Yeah.
At least better than certain sources. That's all.
In any case, please look forward for the next podcast because it's going to be more often, more consistent project. Right. So yeah, there's that. So as always, good afternoon.
Should we do one final question from?
Okay. Yes.
One final question from Ragnar.
From Ragnar.
Go ahead.
So is Maxwell's
demon
true magic?
Like Maxwell's demon is essentially a hypothetical existence that has the ability to essentially sort particles into like higher energy and lower energy states, and basically it results in a situation where like you could hypothetically have like I guess unlimited energy come out of that. Like
it's basically like breaking the law of conservation energy. Basically, that's the idea.
Yeah. This particular phenomenon is supposedly like something that would be rectified, or rather, like this impossibility rather is circumvented by the existence of the third magic. So the third magic, like once it instantiates, like okay, like to basically cover what the third magic does. The third magic takes a soul and then like casts it into reality and like essentially forces its iteration. A soul that's iterated has no need to like eat. It has no need to breathe. It has no need for really anything, but it still lives and it can still act. It can still do various things and so forth. This is like obviously a breaking of the law of conservation because generally speaking, any living entity would consume energy, or rather there'd be a loss of energy. So like once you iterate something into existence using the third magic, that thing becomes something that's like a perpetual motion machine. It can act endlessly without any cost. So yeah. So what happens when like the third magic comes into existence is that like the impossibility that is Maxwell's demon comes to pass as something that becomes possible, basically.
Right.
Very nice.
So I guess like that's.
Well, thank you for coming, guys. I hope you had fun.
Yeah. And as always, take care for yourself because the new virus is pretty bad right now, and I also have contracted the virus. Yeah. I have so please take care of yourself. Yes. Stay hydrated and always. Thanks for listening. Take care.
And we'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye bye.
We'll move to general chat now.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you.
That was fun.
Hello. Yeah. So. Where's the recording file? I stopped recording.